What's up, monkeys? Welcome back to another video. It's been a while, but I'm back, and today we have another tier list video for you guys. This video is going to be the tier list for season 3.5 or release 22.1. If there's a lot of things that change in like a future update, I'll probably just put them in a description. If there's too many things to just put in a description, I'll make a new video. And if I don't make a new video, in the meantime, I will put the title to outdated if this video is somehow outdated in the future. So if you're watching this like 2 or 3 months in the future, just know that this tier list might not be true to the current patch. Alright, to get right into it, let's just go over the tiers before we start. We have S tier, which is the meta gun, maybe stands out a little bit more than the rest. We have A plus tier, which is just a great above average overall gun, usable in most situations. We have A tier, which are just your average guns. They're good to pick up, especially if you don't like the S and A plus tier weapons. I know some people don't. And so they're just pretty average. Then we have B tier, which is like below average, but situational, that you could use them if you have a certain playstyle. D tier, which are really bad. Normally they're bad because of the price to like value comparison. Like if they were cheaper, they might be good. And then F tier, you have just don't use these guns. There's better alternatives. Let's get right into it. We're going to start off with the pistols, and I'll just go over this real quick. Pistol-wise, you really only should be using the hammer. The bulldog... Oh, yeah, and disclaimer, we're not going to be going over the holiday weapons because they are only limited time. The hammer is by far the best pistol. Followed by that, I have no idea because no one else uses anything but the hammer. So I would just suggest use the hammer. On the hammer, you can run low caliber rounds. I suggest doing it because that is the best one. You don't really need like 7 DPS, just having 3 extra mag sight is good. Improved hollow dot to help the time to ADS by like a small ass number, but who cares? And double action. I know it says it reduces the DPS, but over testing, it is actually the exact same DPS as any of these other attachments. So double action will just help you, fire 2 shots at once. Seems pretty good, right? All right, now we're done with pistols because I would only suggest using the hammer. Moving on to S tier guns, we only have one, and that one is the Fletchet. Now you might be like, oh, the Fletchet, I've seen it a couple times. Mathematically speaking, it is the average one, but because it has great in-air accuracy, and what I mean by that is when you're jumping or flying, anytime you're going up, most guns will start to have like bloom. So that's in-air inaccuracy. This gun has almost no inaccuracy while in the air. So therefore, it is a great gun. On this weapon, I would suggest, because it has really low projectile speed by default, run propellant Fletchets, power ejector, and ergonomic grip, or if you are having a hard time with the stability, then you can just run heavy handle, but I would just suggest ergonomic grip. That's it for S tier, and the reason this gun is S tier is just because it's only 200 credits, and you're buying a gun that has relatively good DPS. I believe in testing it had like 250, and the highest gun was only like 265, so you're getting a good DPS for your 200 credit gun. In A plus tier, once again only one gun in this tier, we have the best 500 overall, which is the Advocate. And you may be like, oh, the Advocate, really? Like, because most people right now are using AR-55. The reason the Advocate is so good is because, once again, the in-air accuracy. With the AR-55, you cannot jump, nor can you use the Dragonfly and shoot it. You have to be stationary, and being stationary isn't always good. With the Advocate, you can fly. The DPS, you only lose like 5 DPS on this gun compared to the AR, so that's why it's A+. On this, I would highly suggest Shredder rounds. If you don't really like to PvP that much, piercing rounds is fine. You only lose like 20 DPS for it, but I would suggest Shredder rounds if you're looking for the overall thing. Long barrel just to help with projectile speed. Rapid cycler doesn't really do much because it's only around like 5 or 6 DPS. I know it says 12, but it's only like 5 more. And light stock to help with ADS time. Once again, you can use heavy stock if you prefer. Moving on to A tier, we have a decent amount of more guns in this tier. We have the AR-55, which if you still prefer to not, like if you're not really wanting to jump in a fight or slide jump or use the Dragonfly, then you can still use the AR-55. It will outperform the Advocate if you're not trying to jump with your gun. So this is an A tier weapon. On this weapon, extended mag because nothing else, long barrel, and light stock. Same thing here. Next A tier gun is Manticore. This gun is great if you're not looking for that overall gun and you just purely want to get in someone's face and shred them. It has the highest DPS out of any 500, maybe even the highest in the game. Let me just check real quick. I think it might actually have the highest in the game. So yeah, it is really high DPS. You are losing a decent amount of projectile speed, so your bullets are going to travel a little bit slower. But if you want to run this and you just want to get up in someone's face, I would highly suggest this weapon. It also has great in-air accuracy, so if you want to fly with it, do it. Mercury Infused will be the best attachment for the mag. Power ejector for this, and light stock. I don't really suggest a sight for most of these, by the way, because if you want to run a sight, feel free. I wouldn't really suggest it, though, because it's just makes it obnoxious to shoot. Next A-tier weapon is the Brute. Once again, it's got pretty good DPS. It sits around the same kind of area. The only issue with this is the DPS was a bit lower. The projectile speed was a bit lower than the Advocate. That's why you're seeing it one tier lower than the Advocate. But the good thing with this is you get your clip off really fast, and so that way you can kind of, shoot off a whole clip and then hide behind cover if that's the kind of playstyle you want to do. Or if you just like faster shooting weapons. With this, I would suggest heavy battery to have more mag size. Internal stabilizer, so that way your spread is reduced. I know, you can also run light alloy, but the internal stabilizer really helps with the weapon spread because this thing has a decent amount of that, especially when you're in the air. And heavy stock or sleek stock is up to you. I prefer heavy stock on this because I feel like the stability is nice to have because it kind of struggles at a little bit of range. Next A-tier gun is the Scrapper. I would probably say this is the best choice other than the Flechette, just due to the fact that it has the highest DPS of all 200s. It does actually beat out the Flechette by about, what's the number? Let me get it for you guys. By about 15 DPS, and that is including the Quicksilver. So you run Quicksilver on this, Heavy Slicer just to help with projectile speed, and might as well put Heavy Handle on because there's no other option. We have 3 more A-tier weapons. One of those is the Karma. Now, this thing is great. The DPS obviously isn't great because it's got a long reload time, but if you want something that can almost one-shot or just something that shreds someone at the beginning of the fight, I would highly suggest this weapon. Only reason it's so low, like A-tier, and that's not really low, but only reason it is down here is because it's 800 credits. Most games, you can be doing that and buying an 800 credit weapon, but in a match with a bunch of good players, it is really hard to get 800 credits. On the Karma, I would suggest low caliber slabs for projectile speed and lightweight stock for movement speed. Next A-tier gun is the C32. This gun is just really fun, really good. It's a great close range sniper. Long range it doesn't do great, but close range it's amazing. So on this, I would say extended magazine, just so that way you don't have to reload much in fights. Holographic sight is just my personal thing. I wouldn't really suggest the 8x, but I think 4x, 1.5, and holo all do fine. I would probably suggest these two, but if you like 4x, then go ahead. Rapid cartridge feeder, just because, extra rounds per minute is definitely better than reducing a little bit of spread. Next A-tier gun is the Arbiter. The Arbiter has more chunk than the C32 and does a little bit better at range, but has a lot slower fire rate. So if you prefer the more actual sniper type thing versus this is more like a marksman rifle, then you can use the Arbiter. On the Arbiter, I would suggest expanded container, once again, just to help with mag size. Aerodynamic scope is by far the best. I wouldn't suggest anything else. Maybe 4x if you don't like the zoom, but it really does help. Low caliber mag rail, so that way you can have more projectile speed, and once again lightweight stock, because moving faster while you're holding your gun is definitely nice. Alright, that's it for A tier. These are B tier guns coming up next. These don't really matter as much. What I'm kind of going to do here is give you the situations they'd be useful in and give you better alternatives. First up, we have the Lacerator. This gun just doesn't have the DPS. It has like 189 DPS level 1 compared to something like the Flechette, which has 250. So you're losing like 60 DPS to use this weapon. If you're a god at hitting all headshots, it will do okay, but it'll still get outperformed by other 200s. So I would just suggest if you want to use this, just use like a Flechette or something. But if you really like the Lacerator, the playstyle, you need to be sitting pretty far back. You cannot let the opponents get close to you with like a Flechette or a Scrapper if you're using this gun. They will melt you way faster. If you want to use it though, and you want to play that distant playstyle, Quicksilver Coating is by far the best here, just helps shred the person. Rapid Slicer, if you don't like tapping, then Automatic Slicer does kind of fine, but Rapid Slicer is the best. and heavy stock just to help with that. Obviously, you're trying to fight at range, so it's nice to have stability. Next B tier gun is the PDW. This gun isn't awful by any means. It's just kind of worse than the Scrapper and the Flechette. It doesn't have good in-air accuracy, so you can't really jump and shoot with it a lot. It has a bit of bloom on the sight. If you notice the sight's like a circle, it kind of blooms around that circle, so at distance, bullets will just fly around them. So if you want to use the PDW, by all means go ahead. I would suggest extended mag, extended barrel, and light stock. But I would highly suggest you just use the Flechette, and if you don't like the Flechette, just use the Scrapper. Moving on to D tier, I'm kind of just going to go over these. I won't even go to tell you what to put on them because I think they're not useful, but I'll go over them anyway. Guarantee is in D tier. Wouldn't really suggest this gun. It's too pricey for how little you get off of it. Shatter gun, if you like shotguns, go ahead. It's fun to use. I don't think it's good, but it's fun. Maelstrom, it's kind of the opposite of the shatter gun. It's not good or fun, so just don't use it. It's only D tier because its DPS is relatively okay. And Zeus Beam. Zeus Beam is alright. It's just the 800 credits. It's just such an expensive gun for how little it does in comparison to some other things. If you're buying an 800, you really should just be only buying a Karma. And that's it for D tier. F tier, I'm just going to go over it real quick. Core is the first F tier gun. Bad because low DPS. Haze, it's bad because people can just walk away from the bombs. Carla, it's pretty bad just because it's an 800. That doesn't do a lot, but explode. Detonator, same thing. 800 that just doesn't do a lot. Trench gun is the next F tier gun. It just doesn't, you can get up close with the Flechette and maybe win against the Flechette with the trench gun, but every other situation you're going to lose unless you're like a centimeter away from their face. Gorgon is the next bad gun or F tier gun. It's just, it's bad. Don't use it. Just use anything else. Next is Basilisk. With some more testing, I think you could probably put this gun in D tier. I don't think it's really worth buying it, though, because you're only getting like 150 damage per shot. You actually have less DPS than any other sniper, and it's still got projectile speed. It's not a hit scan gun. Next F tier gun is Phasic. It just doesn't... It's got the same DPS as the Lacerator, and I said the Lacerator was bad. This gun is even worse. It costs 300 more, and you're not even, like, gaining DPS. Wouldn't recommend running it. Run any other 500. Next is KBR Longshot. This gun, you could probably use it. It's not the worst. I still think it's F tier because it's just 500, and, like, why would you buy this over, like, an Advocate, Manticore, or AR? But, whatever. If you enjoy the triple burst shot or something like that, it could be pretty fun. But I don't suggest buying it if you're actually looking for a good gun. And last gun on the list is the Comrade. This, I mean, just like the other things, it's not as pricey as like a detonator, but it does even less than a detonator, and it's 500 credits for your useless weapon. Alright, that is it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. Just to go over like the top tiers, we have S tier is Flechette, A plus tier is Advocate, and A tier is AR-55, Manticore, Brute, Scrapper, Karma, C32, and Arbiter. If you're wondering what my loadout is right now, I run the Flechette, which is the best 200, the Advocate, which is the best 500, and then the Karma if I want to buy a late game weapon. You can also slot a C32 or Arbiter here, or if you don't like the Advocate, slot it here as well, and then have like double snipers. That's it for me today, boys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you monkeys later. Peace.